समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉपअप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या? समझ में नहीं आया।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉपअप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
अब समझा।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
China is furious with Japan's new Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi. But why do her Taiwan remarks cut into decades of strategic anxiety in the region? China and Japan are facing their sharpest diplomatic clash in years and decades. The trigger? A few crisp, unscripted sentences spoken by Japan's new Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi. And this happened during a parliamentary Q&A with an opposition leader. Now, asked what might constitute an existential threat to Japan, she replied that a Chinese attack on Taiwan would directly endanger Japan's survival and could therefore trigger the right of self-defense, meaning Japan could legally use force. Beijing literally erupted. Chinese state media called her dangerous, delusional, warmongering, witch, and demanded she withdraws the remarks. A few extremists online went further, asking for her head. But the real question is quite simple. Did she actually say anything new? The short answer to that is no. But the timing, tone, and strategic environment make the comment far more consequential than anything Japan has said before. Now, to understand this, one must examine the following four factors. First is the geographic logic that has always shaped Japanese post-war security apparatus. Second is the evolution of America's island chain strategy. Third is Beijing's walling approach in sea, in space, and in cyberspace. And fourth is Japan's recent shifts under the shadow of Trump-era uncertainty. Now, let me extrapolate the above four and give you an overview of the situation in at least 8 relevant factors. First, of course, is geography is destiny. Japan lives inside the world's most strategic maritime crossroads. Japan is an island state perched at the exact intersection of East Asia's volatile maritime geopolitics. Its geography gives it both strategic depth and strategic vulnerability. Being an island nation itself, it has territory disputes with all 3 of its continental neighbors, with China on the Senkaku or Diaoyu Islands, with South Korea on Takeshima or Dokdo Islands, and with Russia on Kuril or Northern Territories. But for the immediate question on Taiwan, only one of these matters, Senkaku. So, let's look at the Senkaku-Taiwan proximity. So, Senkaku Islands sit just about 170 km northeast of Taiwan, 140 km east of Taiwan's Penjia Islet. It is west of Okinawa, and it is directly north of the southern Ryukyu Island chain. And I'm going to come back to Ryukyu in a bit. Any Chinese military action toward Taiwan would almost certainly involve activities across this space, bringing Japan into the operational picture, whether Tokyo wishes it or not. Now, you cannot attack Taiwan without projecting force across the seas that Japan considers critical to its survival and also a part of its EEZ. Now, as far as China's posture is concerned, China has developed and deployed an extensive A2AD, which means anti-access area denial system, around the East China Sea, the South China Sea, and the Strait of Taiwan. Now, the goal is to make intervention by US forces and their allies extremely difficult and costly, and to shift the military balance in the region to China's favor. But now let's come back to the Ryukyu factor and the US-Japan security shield. Why is Japan automatically dragged into a Taiwan conflict? Because of the Ryukyu Islands, particularly Okinawa, a crucial node of American power projection in Asia. Japan is broadly divided into 4 main islands. From north to south, these are Hokkaido, Honshu, Shikoku, and Kyushu. Though it has over 14,000 islands in total. The Ryukyu Islands are a chain located to the south of Kyushu and Okinawa. Now, what's special is that Okinawa hosts around 75% or more of all US forces stationed in Japan. Key facilities include the following: the Kadena Air Base, the largest US Air Force base in the Western Pacific, the Marine Corps Air Station Futenma. It is quite controversial for its location in a dense urban area. Then, the US has multiple Marine Corps and naval logistics facilities. The US-Japan Security Treaty obliges the US to defend Japan if it is attacked. Now, since the US bases in Okinawa would almost certainly be targeted in any Taiwan-related conflict or get involved in any Taiwan-related conflict, Japan's territory cannot be separated from the Taiwan contingency. So, this is the subtext of Takaichi's remarks. It is not merely ideological or strategic or political. It is also geographical and quite logically so. Now, the next point is, why does it matter what Takaichi said if she did not say anything new? When Takaichi stated that a Chinese assault on Taiwan could threaten Japan's survival, or any attack on Taiwan would threaten Japan's survival, she was restating a position articulated first by the late Shinzo Abe and then reiterated in varying degrees by other prime ministers such as Kishida and Ishiba. The logic is codified in Japan's 2015 security laws, again which were passed under Shinzo Abe, which allow collective self-defense under existential crisis conditions. So why did Beijing react with fury? Because this time the words are backed by a radically transformed Japanese security posture. The interesting fact is, Japan's security doctrine has shifted more in the last 10 years than it has in the previous 60 years. Two developments, one global and one American, have forced Japan to rethink its contested pacifist posture. And these two are, first, the Ukraine war, which has now been perceived in Japan as a three-front threat. This first shock was Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Japan immediately saw three alarming patterns. One, that deepening of Russia-China alignment with major implications for Northeast Asia and also for growing convergence between Beijing and Moscow in the Indo-Pacific. Second, North Korea's open support for Russia, including the transfer of missiles and thousands of troops. Third, a growing sense of Japanese strategic anxiety as war returned to Europe, while Asia confronted rising tensions, and Indo-Pacific players do not wish to take sides in the worst-case scenario. So, former Prime Minister Fumio Kishida captured this new reality for Japan with the idea of indivisible security from west to the east. And therefore, Japan responded by adopting, first in 2023, a new national security strategy, followed in 2025 by a brand new defense strategy. And all of this provided a huge boost to Japan's defense budget by 2027, which is going to be to the tune of about 45 to 50 trillion yen. Now, all of this emphasized long-range strike capabilities, hardening of the Ryukyu Islands, expanded SDF, which is the Self-Defense Forces, readiness, and started what is known as the Official Security Assistance, the OSA, in a marked departure from the erstwhile Official Development Assistance, Japan's famous soft power tool. And remember that India has been the largest recipient of the ODA at one point of time. So coming back, Japanese analysts now speak openly of a three-front destabilization: from China, from North Korea, and from Russia, amid growing nuclear saber-rattling from North Korea. And the second part, which is American, is that the fragility of the American guarantees under Trump. This second shift came from Washington in 2025. Donald Trump's America First worldwide has cast a doubt on alliance commitments. It has shaken NATO and often swung unpredictably on China. And from Tokyo's perspective, this could mean three things: that American backstop in a Taiwan contingency is expected but no longer guaranteed. The second, the level of US intervention remains uncertain. And third, that Japan must build independent deterrent capabilities. And that is the reason why Japan has accelerated defense spending, purchased Tomahawks, hardened bases in the Southwest Islands, and integrated more deeply with US forces. Now, in short, even though Takaichi's words are old, but Japan's capabilities are new and the threat environment is extremely volatile. And here, let me iterate something quite important, which is the island chain strategy. You know, the old American containment blueprint exists even today, but it has diluted its form. To understand why Taiwan is the geopolitical fault line of Asia, we need to revisit a Cold War idea that never really went away. And this was America's island chain strategy. Originally conceptualized by John Foster Dulles in 1951 during the Korean War, the idea was quite simple. Surround the Soviet Union and Communist China with concentric maritime defense lines and use them to project power and restrict their naval access, which means the Soviets and the Chinese naval access into the Pacific. So the US built bases across these chains. China noticed and would respond later under Xi. So what are the three island chains? The first island chain starts from Kurils in the north, then goes to mainland Japan, then the Ryukyu Islands, then Taiwan, then Philippines and Borneo. You know, China considers this its primary containment ring because it is home to choke points and quite important choke points and the waters claimed by China in the South China Sea. What about the second island chain? The second island chain starts from Japan's Bonin Islands and Volcano Islands, goes to Guam in Marianas, all the way to Palau and even extends to western New Guinea. And that is the US stronghold in the mid-Pacific. Guam is essentially America's fortress island. And now let's talk about the third island chain, which starts from Aleutians, goes to Hawaii, then Oceania, as well as New Zealand. And this is the deep Pacific defense layer. To the US, these have been the gates that ensure maritime dominance over the decades. But to China, they have been perceived as walls, blocking its rise, which brings us to the next concept. How has China responded to these island chain strategies? So China's response has been walling of the seas, skies, and cyberspace. You know, scholar Christian Wirth has argued that both Washington and Beijing, as well as Tokyo, have tried to solidify sovereign power in liquid space. Whereas the US used island chains as strategic barriers, China under Xi Jinping has developed a comprehensive walling approach. So for example, there's Xi's Great Wall at Sea, which means China's maritime activities, especially after 2013 when BRI was launched, and they show a clear wallification pattern. Expansive maritime claims in the East and South China Seas, creation of militarized artificial islands in the Spratlys, which is also known as the Great Wall of Sand, and heavier naval and coast guard presence around the Senkaku. This is partly defensive, which means breaking the first island chain by the West, and partly expansionist. Now let's look at Xi Jinping's Great Wall in the sky. This pertains to China's rocket force, anti-ship ballistic missiles, and a vast satellite network. All of this form together an anti-access area denial shield, which is another wall. And third, what about the Great Firewall in cyberspace? China's cyber boundaries act as another layer of sovereign walling and controlling. And together, these walls try to turn the first island chain from a US barrier into a Chinese shield. And if you remember, I told you that Japan has also responded to it. So what is Japan's counter-walling? And what Japan has done is that it has fortified the Ryukyus. Japan's response has been to reinforce the Ryukyu chain, especially Yonaguni, Ishigaki and Miyako, its front-line islands closest to Taiwan. And what it has done are basically new missile bases, electronic warfare units, rapid deployment regiments, stockpiling fuel, ammo and humanitarian supplies. And this hardening in Ryukyu actually mirrors China's militarization of the Spratlys in the South China Sea. Ironically, in a pre-Trump era, this would have been welcomed by Washington as complementing US deterrence. But now it is driven by Japan's uncertainty about America's reliability. And before I conclude this part, there is a paradox which needs to be highlighted. Remember that the strategic walling comes in direct contrast to the concept of free and open Indo-Pacific and also the freedom of navigation. The latter is hoping for the best case scenario and the former is preparing for the worst case scenario. And the interesting bit about Indo-Pacific is that they both coexist. And so before I wrap up, let's revisit the latest Japan-China spat. Beijing knows three things. Japan is no longer content with passive defense. Its new capabilities make its old declaratory policies more potent. Second, Takaichi is a nationalist hawk. She comes from the same ideological lineage as Shinzo Abe, advocating constitutional revisionism and a stronger military. And third, that the regional environment is highly volatile. War in the Middle East, war in Europe, North Korea's missile threats, China-Russia partnership and the Taiwan Straits tensions raise the stakes, as does the speculation around Xi Jinping's ambitions to unify Taiwan with mainland China, maybe by 2027. Thus, when Takaichi repeats an old position, it resonates in a new strategic world, one where Japan is armed, alarmed, and reluctantly more autonomous in its defense posture than ever. So, it doesn't really change much on the ground right away, but shows the dangerous direction that an escalation ladder could move towards in case of a Taiwan contingency or even an accidental attack. And that, dear viewer, would have gravest implications for all, including for New Delhi. But for now, stay tuned.